Skylana did neurofeedback at another facility called the EEG Institute. This is her story.
Before neurofeedback, I had a lot of anxiety, the kind of anxiety that is physical, that takes over your body. I had panic attacks once a day or every other day. I really never slept. I was awake all night long. I would be shaking. I would feel like I was gonna die. It was overwhelming. I felt like my mind was nonstop all the time. So it was exhausting. I tried to take an anti-anxiety Xanax because the panic attacks were getting so bad, and I had been in therapy for 2.5 years. And the therapy was great, but there was just something that I couldn't change. Like, no matter how hard I worked, like, my brain just had this place where it felt broken, and it felt like no matter what I did, I would have a panic attack. I tried to use Xanax, and that made it worse, basically. Nobody had really explained to me what Xanax was actually like, and how some people have to be careful, and how it can actually do the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do. And I was the kind of person where it did the opposite. When they say that those drugs can cause suicidal thoughts and whatever, they can change your brain. Like, they can make you do things that you wouldn't normally do. I ended up in the hospital 2 times because I did almost kill myself, and I didn't even really know it. I don't even know how to explain that, but I guess if anybody's ever been on, psychoactive drugs, like, sometimes you do things and you don't know that you're doing it, or you don't remember. So I was at the point of okay, I'm either gonna die or I'm gonna do something. I had remembered that my grandpa had told me about neurofeedback, and that is what had helped my aunt to get off of drugs and deal with a lot of anger issues. And he gave me the information for the EEG Institute. Since the very first time that I did it, which was June 19th or around there in 2014, I haven't had a panic attack. And up until that point, like I said, I was having them almost every day or every other day, and I have not had one in 4 years since then. I slept that night for the first time in a long time without using something to sleep. It saved my life, and I've never gone back to the way that I was before. Obviously, nothing I had done before had worked that well at all, or had made it worse. So when it did start to actually work, yeah, I was super surprised and shocked, because you really can live without the anxiety, and it seems totally unbelievable that that's even possible. I remember feeling like, will I ever feel the way that other people feel? But now I do, and it's unbelievable that I lived like that for so long.
Wow. I am blown away by Skylana's story after hearing her experience with neurofeedback, and then those of her friends and family who have also done it. Even if right now I'm not having the best results, she said, just give it a little bit of time, and often it will stabilize, and you have to keep communicating with the practitioner, telling them what's going on so they can adjust. So I've got to keep talking to Peak Brain and Dr. Hill to make sure that we are adjusting properly with the protocols. There's something to this for sure. I told Dr. Hill some of the issues I was having, and we decided to reassess and adjust some of the protocols.
So right now we're training at CZ, the vertex of your head, across the left side to your left ear, in a region called the sensory motor strip. It incorporates some of the motor cortex as well as the premotor cortex.
What does that mean?
So by training this region, we've found, using neurofeedback techniques, it is really good for self-regulation, helps promote sleep, general calmness and focus, inhibitory control.
One thing I've noticed is I think my focus has improved. And I don't know if that's just placebo, but I really do think that I've been pretty on it with work.
By the 4th week, I was feeling unstoppable.
Now I'm about to myth bust a common misconception and urban legend that multitasking is productive, when in reality multitasking actually destroys productivity, because you're doing so many things at once, basically all half-assed with a fraction of your mental energy. If you focus on one thing at a time and monotask, then you will do that task far better and get it done sooner, and it actually is a vehicle for increased productivity. I try as much as I can to monotask. However, my brain likes to be pulled in a lot of different directions. I often find it really difficult to monotask. This is something I've been trying to work on. How do I increase my productivity? How do I focus on one single task at a time? And it seems like now I'm able to do that when I wasn't before, and that is definitely a noticeable change in this past week or so.
I was a beast at work. My productivity and focus was nothing I had experienced before. My sleep also started to regulate very nicely.
I woke up so easily this morning, right at 6 a.m., and that never happens. I'm normally struggling to get out of bed. I have to force myself to wake up, and this past week I've noticed that I'm able to get up right at 6 when my alarm goes off, sometimes even without my alarm.
I really did not expect that to happen. I was very concerned in the beginning about all of the issues coming up.
Neurofeedback can be used to treat ADHD and autism in even very young children. At one of my sessions at Peak Brain, I had a very young child sitting right next to me doing his training. Jessica had told me about a story of a 12-year-old girl who had hundreds of drop seizures every hour, and after her first 6 sessions of neurofeedback, she was having a couple a day. So she greatly reduced the amount of seizures she was having, in addition to never being able to sleep through the night and her parents being up all night because she couldn't sleep, to after doing neurofeedback being able to sleep 12 hours through the night. So we have these stories of people who have had a ton of benefits in all sorts of ways, including veterans with PTSD. Just because one person does have great results does not mean that every single person will. However, I think there's so much potential here, and we just have to look more into it, and we've got to make sure that this is a field that is researched, because it has the potential to help so many people who maybe are at the end of their rope and nothing has worked for them before.
Dr. Hill says that he normally does 30 to 40 sessions for the effects to be lasting. I did 16 over the course of 1 month. In addition to my anecdotal evidence for my results, we also did another brain mapping to see how I improved in terms of the data. What were my results?
Yeah, so if you remember when we first mapped your brain, we found a couple things in terms of like executive function or attention management. This database says you're a little ADD-like when I first met you, and you're no longer fitting that criteria, which means you're being a lot more visually attentive, I would expect. And your brain map shows the same thing. We had about a 2 to 2.5 standard deviation excess in the back of the head, meaning you weren't able to shut down your alpha. And now that's down to about 1.5 standard deviations. So again, about a standard deviation of change. And I'm not at all surprised you're feeling a little more productive, crisp. I would also guess that transitioning in and out of sleep might be a touch easier for you.
Yes, I was very pleasantly surprised to find that waking up in the morning was a lot easier. Well, it was a world of a difference. So I don't know how you did that, but
well, sleep affects everything, of course.
This is still kind of a newer alternative method of treatment that needs to be studied more rigorously. It needs to get more funding, although it's quite difficult, as we know, and it's very difficult to administer a double-blind placebo-controlled study for something like neurofeedback, because you really do need the individualization of the process for it to really work, which means that you're going to need the participation of the subjects. It was a little scary at times, I'm not gonna lie, feeling like my brain was being tossed and turned and slapped around, but I think it was a positive experience in the end for me to learn about this, and I got incredible results once it did stabilize. Okay, that's it for this episode of Skylife. I hope that you enjoyed learning all about neurofeedback and seeing me mess around with my brain. If you have any ideas for topics that you want me to explore or things you want me to try, definitely comment those below, and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button so you will be notified when I post a new video. And remember, you have the power to thrive. You have the power to live your best life ever. It's yours, it's here, and it's this moment. All right, I will see you next week. Bye.